Hello everybody and welcome to episode 11 of the East Pittsburgh Fitness Podcast. I'm your host Jeremiah Rowe, head strength coach for Case Specific Athletics here in Plum, Pennsylvania. We specialize in individualized sports performance and personal training for everyone from the average Joe to elite athletes. You can learn more about us over at www.casespecificwellness.com. And today's show is brought to you by Hand X Band. While schools and athletic programs are starting to probably trend towards another shutdown, I think in the back of everybody's mind is a concern that we're going to go back into another shutdown with gyms and fitness centers. And so with that in mind, I would encourage all of you to get ahead of that and pick you up some fitness equipment for at home. One of the best pieces of equipment that you can get for that case is resistance bands. They are cheap, they don't have any weight, so you can travel with them well. Not that you're going to travel anywhere during another shutdown, but they are a great asset for your repertoire of home fitness equipment. And Hand X Band is a fantastic local to Pennsylvania brand that has high quality bands. I know a lot of the bands that you get on Amazon or online are just from pop-up overseas companies that are here today and gone tomorrow. And a lot of these bands have more of a plastic type texture to them. They break, they just they snap off like they're plastic. They don't stretch and wear slowly like you would expect from a latex band. So Hand X Band, again, high quality. And they also have their flagship product, which is the actual Hand X Band, which is a great tool for working the extensors of your wrist, your hand, your forearm, all of these muscles, where generally with any kind of weight training, we're always gripping down on something. That's flexion. We're putting our hand, our forearm, everything into flexion. When we train that all the time, but never the opposite motion or movement, what you get from that is muscular imbalance that can create elbow and joint pain later on. So check out the Hand X Band. Check out their normal resistance bands. The 41-inch ones are a huge asset to anyone's fitness equipment collection. And if you use the code JROW at checkout, you get 20% off your order. So go check them out. Make sure you're stocked up and prepared for quarantine volume 2, quarantine, and get ready to go. So today is going to be a fun show as I look at my guest over here shaking his head at me from that intro. He's a very dear friend of mine, and actually going back to when we met, he is really the reason that I have this position with Case Specific Athletics today. And we'll get to that a little bit during the show, but we're going to step a little bit away from the wellness and athletics side that I'm usually talking about on here. And we're going to talk a little bit of bodybuilding and just kind of let you get to know another member of the Case Specific family, Mr. Robert Stephen Marty, COO of Case Specific Nutrition. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeremiah. I'm excited to sit here with you today, talk about our history, go over how we met, how I was introduced to Andrew, owner and founder of Case Specific Nutrition, owner and founder of Case Specific Wellness, talk a little bit about my history and why it is that I'm able to sit here today and help our clients.
Yeah. Rob is a huge asset to the company, and it's kind of a new position that we put him into, and it's benefiting everybody a lot. So we're going to get into that a little bit. But first, Rob is a good friend of mine from college. That was where we met. Honestly, I don't remember actually meeting you. I don't remember the actual circumstances. I assume it was at the gym at Slippery Rock. And for some reason, I think that, you know who it was? It was Evan.
Yeah.
It was Evan Mulvihill.
Yeah.
That's right. Shout out to Evan if you're listening.
It's been a long time. I wished him a happy birthday this year.
Yeah, I think I did too. I haven't seen that. He was a good dude. I enjoyed training with him a lot. So, okay, we figured it out. Evan was a friend of mine in college who I was kind of into the bodybuilding with, and Rob was a mutual friend of his. And I think we just kind of like crossed paths during a workout at some point, and Rob and I hit it off well, and it's all history from there.
Bodybuilding has been a great networking tool for me, and I know that we're going to get into our history in bodybuilding and competing, weightlifting in general. But when I think of the number of people that I've met over the years competing in different states, especially the number of people that I met and really to this day admire and still talk to through Slippery Rock's bodybuilding club, I always chuckle that Slippery Rock even had a bodybuilding club.
Yeah.
There is a certain irony that in high school, I actually had a group of friends from multiple local schools who competed in bodybuilding, and I would look at them and think, man, I like exercising, but in high school I was 145 pounds. Somehow I played offensive and defensive line for football, and because of football, I got into the weight room because
that's just the next.
I would have got handled. I got handled anyways. Football was never good to me. Royally gotten beaten up every single week. It was not something that I enjoyed. I enjoyed the camaraderie. But while sports never stuck because I was not good at them, even to this day, I tell people that I'm built like an athlete without any athletic ability. When I graduated from high school, weightlifting had become a big staple in my life. It was something that I really enjoyed. It was something that I was seeing progress in. And then heading to Slippery Rock and being introduced to the bodybuilding club through a older student, senior student, Chris Lefevre.
Was Chris the one? That's so funny because Chris is the reason that I ended up joining the bodybuilding club.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Chris and Doug.
Chris and Doug Jamita.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they were presidents of the club.
They were, yeah. You probably joined the same year I did.
Probably. And I remember I would spend so much time at the Arc, and looking back at college now, I'm like, where did I find the time to spend 2 or 3 or more hours at the Arc 7 days a week?
My freshman year, I would work out, I would lift weights for 2 hours, and then I would do an hour on the treadmill at the end of that 2 hours.
Totally unnecessary.
I get mad at myself now if I work out for like over an hour. I'm wasting so much time. This is ridiculous.
Right, and there's no need. I mean, granted, we're still learning every day. Jeremiah does this podcast, and he's providing the insights that he's getting from working with athletes at various levels in various sports with various goals. And human performance is a constantly developing field. And now that I've been introduced to case-specific nutrition at a closer level, and I'm seeing what our sports dietitians do with athletes, genetic testing, lab testing, the amount of performance that, genetically you may be predisposed to or you might not be. And so things like building muscle or doing marathons versus sprints, so much of it comes back to your wiring. And then once you have that base understanding, that's not to say that anybody can't do anything. Don't get me wrong. If you're stubborn enough and you can commit the time, even I could become an athlete. But that...
Are you ever going to be an elite athlete?
Yes.
Even with that much training, though? No.
Exactly.
We're genetically predisposed to certain activities, I guess, or certain physiology that's going to promote performance in this area or this area. And some people have more than others. I put on mass a lot easier than a lot of people probably could. I wasn't going to say it, but right. So I can put on muscle a lot easier than someone, and I can jump high. But as far as I was an ice hockey player myself, and there was other players who were smaller than me, maybe slower than me, but they could kind of visualize the game and see how a play was going to go and how it was going to unfold, almost like they were watching it in slow motion. And so they were very proactive, I guess you would say. And I had a very reactive mind. So, and I never exceeded in hockey. I was a great athlete, but I didn't have the sport intellect to actually to excel at it. And so...
Right. And so the reason we just went down that rabbit hole is because when I got to Slippery Rock and I was going into the Arc and exercising spending entirely too much time, you're going to meet people. And so I was approached by the bodybuilding club, and they said, have you ever considered competing? I'm like, oh, I have a group of friends who do this. No, I do not compare myself to them. They're much, much bigger than me and have significantly more muscle mass. And I'm skinny with some muscle. I don't think that it would ever be appropriate for me. And the more time you spend with people, you start to think, well, maybe I could do this.
Yeah.
And so with their encouragement and going back to my friends in Ohio who competed, I ended up hiring a coach from Ohio. And when you hear the term bro science, we all know that that's a thing. There's bro science that is relevant, and there's bro science that is not relevant. And when I look back at my first competition, when I competed at Slippery Rock in 2012 or 2013, one of those 2 years, my training was excessive. Cardio was required. You would do 45 minutes to an hour every single day. That was how you, quote unquote, burnt fat and got lean. Lots of overtraining and a diet that birds could eat. I ate a lot of tuna, a lot of orange roughy, whole grain, baby cereal, honey, and asparagus. My urine smelled all the time. And as I got closer to the show, and this goes back to the bro scientist that was my trainer, you would increase the amount of asparagus that you would eat because it was a diuretic. And you would cut your baby cereal and eat more proteins because carbs are the devil. And not to get too nerdy on you guys, but then there's the water, holding water philosophy, and everybody goes into a show differently as far as a water retention standpoint. And this guy had me not drinking any water leading up to the show because I wanted to be so lean. It was a miserable experience. But somewhere along the line, I got fish hooked. I fell in love with bodybuilding, and for my first 3 shows, it was an absolute awful physical and emotional experience. Like, looking back now, because I've talked with people and talked with Andrew from Case Pacific and have reflected on where I was actually at during that time, I had an eating disorder. It became obsessive. I did not expect to win the Slippery Rock. I competed there, and then the following week I competed at the Natural Northern Ohio, and I took 2nd or 3rd, and that's when it really went downhill for me. I became obsessed. I had a buddy who won the Natural Ohio as a teenager, and so I only had 6 more months to compete as a teenager, so I signed up for the fall Natural Ohio.
Natural Northern USA.
Yeah. And for the next 6 months, I woke up, did an hour of fasted cardio. I trained every single day. I ate even less orange roughy and tuna. And there were pictures that my friends would send me of me sleeping in class. My cheekbones were hollowed out. You could have pinched my cheeks together side to side, and they would have touched in the middle. I was so skinny. It is a miracle that I could wake up with the amount of calories that I was expending on physical activity and training. But I didn't learn because I won that show. So I
just set him in the way. It's like, I guess this is me.
This is how you win. This is what you do to be a champion. You carve out a fraction of all of your organs and sacrifice them to the bodybuilding judges.
Slimmer.
Yeah. I was a skeleton with a small amount of muscle. But, I mean, you could have raked my glutes. They were so shredded. And as a natural athlete who has never been the largest competitor on stage, I've always went for shreds and for definition and for lean muscle.
I think I'm going to take an opportunity to kind of branch off of that for a second here, because that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with each person having a genetic propensity to one thing or the other. Rob will always be able to get leaner than me, barring any performance-enhancing substances. He will put my leanness to shame every single time. I probably have 30-plus pounds of mass on him, but if the judges for the show, if we were competing against each other, wanted a leaner competitor, he would beat me every time. So that, again, just something to keep in mind there, that I hate to even go off on a tangent of like social media and things like that, but like so many of these people that we see that are lean all the time, it's not that they're putting in the work and the effort and the time to be that, and you aren't. It's just that some people are built that way and some are not. And again, I certainly don't want to take away any credit from them for the work that they're doing, because I mean, I'm sure most of them are working super hard for that to maintain it, but you might not be able to attain that even if you double their work effort. And so it's just something to keep in mind there as a sidebar to what you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. As I've now competed in 10 plus shows, you learn a lot about yourself. And some of that could have been learned by doing genetic testing or lab tests and different stuff like that. But through experience, you learn a lot too. And I think experience is what drives so much of bro science. But then it doesn't apply to everybody. So that's where it's not appropriate to take what you've learned about yourself and apply it to other people. But I've learned that I cannot build muscle mass while being lean. So I have to put weight on to gain muscle, and then I have to put in a ton of effort that is low aerobic activity, low stress, very much diet-based to retain any of that muscle when I diet, or I essentially become a human yo-yo, where I gain 30 pounds in my off-season, I put on muscle and fat, and then I diet. And the shows following the Natural Ohio that I won, I still had a cardio mentality, very much so. And so I would put on that muscle, put on that weight, start dieting for a show, and literally be the same size for my following show, because aerobic activity burnt just as much of my muscle mass as it did fat. So I'd get back on stage, I'd be shredded, and I'd go, what has my training done for the past year? So bodybuilding is very much a experience-based trial and error field. And after that show that I won, where I developed the eating disorder and was obsessed, every year since I've gotten better about mentality. And so, that was in 2013, 2014. And I've since competed every year since, unless it got canceled due to COVID or I was moving for jobs, because I've lived in several states and moved around a little bit. And looking back at those shows, I always realized that there was something to pull from that, whether it was how I loaded the week before, how I trained the week before. You learn so much about posing. You train differently. Every type of workout. Upper body and lower body days, muscle-specific days, training 7 days a week versus doing weight training 4 days a week and then having active recovery days. Training for strength and keeping reps low versus training for endurance and keeping reps high. What works for hypertrophy? Again, it just goes back to each person is so unique. And as I've learned that, I've also realized, for me, bodybuilding is no longer just about winning and just about my athletic performance or the muscle that I can show on stage. It's now a mindset. So I continue to compete because when I start dieting January 1st and I end up competing in April or May, that 4-month span is a testament and a strengthening of my patience, self-control, and willpower. I really believe that our minds are by far our greatest muscle, and if you do not actively strengthen that muscle, if you don't actively practice patience and self-control and put yourself in periods of stress where you are straining against hunger and you're going to work and you're the bodybuilder or the person who don't have that pizza around me, I'm dieting, it's not fair, or I don't want to spend time with friends or family because I'm hungry and miserable, then you're missing the point. I have always made it a point to still engage in those things, because if I can do them while I'm dieting and training at a high level, then I can do it with ease the rest of the year. And I've seen that carry over into my professional life, because everything can be stressful. Work is stressful, family is stressful, life is stressful. And when we don't take ownership of those things and put ourselves into periods of stress to practice how we're going to respond and how we're going to handle those, such as following a very strict diet and training routine and then making yourself pose and do everything that you have to do for bodybuilding, then when that stress comes up organically, you don't know how you're going to respond. You might be the person who shoots off an email that you're not proud of, or yells at somebody, or conducts yourself in a way that you would later roll your eyes at or be very disappointed in. And because I have consistently put myself in periods of stress through bodybuilding, that has paid huge dividends in my professional and personal life. People say that I'm extremely mellow and well composed, and it's because I've been starving and had to wake up and go to the gym and train and then work a 12-hour shift, and I managed to smile through it and be the person that I want to reflect. And so I can experience any level of stress now, knock on wood, and still, simply put, I say be a decent human being. And so many of us, when we don't actively put ourselves into those periods of stress, of course we're going to fly off the handle. We haven't prepared for that. That's what I most admire and enjoy about bodybuilding now, is that it helps me develop as a person. It's not just developing muscle. And that's why I continue to compete. But if you look at me in clothes, you would never guess that I compete. Most people are very surprised, and it's because it's something that I do for myself. It's something that I'm very proud of, but it's never been something that I flaunt per se, or that somebody who doesn't really know me would pick me out on the street and say, that guy's a competitor, or even pick me out at the gym, unless I'm in prep and leaner than normal, that you would look and say, oh, that guy does competitions.
Yeah. If you see him whenever he's shredded down for a show, though, you absolutely know.
Or you think I'm hungry.
Yeah, dude's definitely hungry at that point. But that was a good, we've been all over the place there in that discussion. We went through 6 different topics, I think, but that was a really good discussion. I'm glad we got to that, because that's the mindset of bodybuilding is so important to the sport. And like Rob said, if you get used to that and you survive that struggle, it makes everything else you do through life so much easier. And I like the part about just learning something from each competition. And we all go through the same things when we compete. Anyone who's listening who has competed knows what I'm talking about. Those who don't or who haven't, you might find this entertaining. Like, one of the things we all do, we obsess over the food that we can't eat, right? So I'll never forget this, man. I competed in 2000. Well, I competed initially in 2013. 2014, I competed again. And there's a couple shows after that, but that show for 2014, a friend of mine and I we were training together, And when we were not training, I don't know how I did this in college either. Like, I don't know how I didn't fail out. Because we would go to my apartment and sit on my couch and stare at the wall. We wouldn't put the TV on. We wouldn't do anything. We'd stare at the wall. We'd talk, crack jokes, whatever. But then if you weren't, you were on social media or just on your phone, you were looking at pictures of food. There's all these food porn accounts on Instagram and Twitter. And I would just be looking at pictures all the time. And after that show, it was so funny because we'll get to where I learned from this actually eventually. But I competed again in 2015. And a friend of mine was prepping for another show at the same time in Florida. And so I decided that I would fly down to Florida right after my show and compete with him the next week. And we spent 3 or 4 months just sending pictures of food back and forth, like nonstop all day, every day, obsessing about food. And when your mind is constantly thinking about the things that you can't have, it rips you apart. And I think that was the show prep that my brother's graduation party happened at some point during the prep. And so I had worked extra hard to make sure that the day of his graduation party I could eat and not worry about it, because we had like really well catered food, and like it was gonna be incredible, and I was gonna hate myself if I didn't get to eat. And I ate 2 enormous plates that were so big I sat on the couch for like the next 3 hours. I couldn't move. My stomach hurt so bad. And it was because I put myself in that position of like complete mental agony over the foods that I can't have, waiting for this competition. And so after those two 2015 competitions, I took 2 years off. I didn't compete for 2 years. It was 3 years, because I didn't compete again until 2018. It was the next time I competed, but when I did, I didn't obsess over the food I couldn't eat. I just relaxed. I just ate my meals, did my training, and this is getting to like the end of my college career, and I've been out of college at this point. I've learned a lot about myself and about nutrition, exercise, all this. I'm good friends with Andrew at this point, and so it was a much healthier approach to the competition. Now, I do take the possibly questionable approach of like every time I compete, I'm there to win, and I don't always, but that's also why I do one competition every other year, because I spend as much time as I can putting on size in between and trying to get better before I spend the time to cut down for a show. But I'm absolutely like there to win the show. Now, I don't get like all meathead, hardcore bodybuilder about it, like posting on social media. That drives me absolutely insane. I hate those people. But that's what I'm there for. And at the end of the day, like my training, my lifestyle with all this is very balanced. I don't have the approach that like Rob discussed having when he started out, where it's like starvation mode or bulk mode all the time. Like I think I train very well balanced, more like an athlete than a bodybuilder most of the time. I eat very balanced, so even at my heaviest, I don't get obsessively or excessively obese or put on too much fat that it's hard to get it back off. But yeah, it's definitely still a mindset of I'm there to win the competition, and maybe that's something I need to work on. I don't know, but I enjoy bodybuilding for that part. Like I want to be the biggest and best competitor on that stage. So I don't know. I guess that just comes down to a different mindset about the sport there, because which I don't think either one is wrong or right, but it's just two different ways of looking at the same thing. I don't know.
So I certainly diet and train with the intent to win.
Yes, yeah, you do. I certainly don't mean to take that away from you.
Yeah,
I've seen you train. I know.
But to Jeremiah's point, and we work both from a personal training, athletic training, and then dietitian standpoint when we're working with people on weight loss and performance and everything under the sun. There isn't a topic health related that doesn't involve a steep learning curve. For you guys listening, if you've never competed, you could look at some of the examples that we're sharing and say, that seems really extreme. I would never put myself in that scenario. I have people make comments to me all the time, I don't know how you do it. You do it. Whether it's nutrition or it's work, I don't know anybody who's not learning and challenging themselves in some way. Every time you get a new iPhone or a new phone, you have to learn that phone. And there's a period where you do things inefficiently. And you look back and you're like, oh, I don't know how I would live without this now. I can't believe that I didn't know how to do this before. And it's no different than what we're discussing with bodybuilding. When I started, I had no understanding of myself or food when it comes to training and being a competitor. No sense of training for willpower or patience. Those are things that I've developed over 10 years. And it starts with curiosity and something that you enjoy. Nobody needs to feel that they have to do a certain thing, be it compete or eat a certain way, but we see that all the time. Folks who want to do keto or want to do the Mediterranean diet or want to be vegetarian or only want to do strength training or only want to do cardio. And that's a fixed mindset. The goal in as many areas as possible is to have an open mindset, open to what you can accomplish and to different ideas and different foods and different activities. It took me until 2020 to be open about flexibility training. I have never stretched. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I know better. I have a degree in exercise science. I know the importance of stretching. And I've made a lackadaisical effort to stretch occasionally, but I've had chronic low back pain. I walk like somebody who's doing a catwalk because my one leg's longer than the other, which essentially is me saying that my hips move a lot. And stretching should have been the solution many years ago, but it took me until 2020 in continuous education and allowing myself to have downtime, time where things aren't scheduled, to question my training methodologies and what I'm doing, to go, you need to stretch. Why are you not stretching? And I set myself a stretch goal, pun intended, of being able to do a split by the end of 2020, and I've stretched every day this year. I will not be able to do a split by the end of the year because I started from nothing, couldn't touch my toes, was 1.5 feet above my toes. But my flexibility has increased dramatically. My shoulder range of motion, my back pain, my general joint pain all got worse at first because I was asking my body to do things that for years I've literally stacked muscle on top and then not stretched. But now I'm starting to feel the best I've ever felt. I'm sleeping better. I don't wake up feeling like a steel pole that can't bend in any direction. And again, the reason that I'm sharing that is because it took me 9 years of training to finally shift from a fixed mindset to an open mindset about flexibility. And as you're working on your wellness journey, regardless if it ever includes bodybuilding, trying to have time to reflect on, am I being open to what my body needs, what my health and my emotion needs are? And that carries over into professional as well, but for the sake of this conversation, if you've always done your training a certain way, opening yourself up to variation in that, be it for performance or for health or for pain management. Jeremiah opened up today's session talking about the flexion of our wrists and our hands with those bands. You should do that because why not? If you don't train those muscles, of course they're not going to get stronger, and you're going to see that maybe 10 years or 20 years down the road, but at some point overtraining extension over flexion is going to have an impact.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, and there's a couple things that I want to dissect there. I don't even know where to start. Going back a little bit, and this cracks me up actually. This is one of the this is an interesting difference between Rob and I that I always appreciate and kind of chuckle at, and that's Rob talking right now about, you know, having that emotional and mental kind of capacity to, you know, look at yourself holistically and like, what do I need to be working on to improve, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm going to take that now back to an earlier part of his discussion right there, where he was talking about people questioning like how you can do this, right? And this is a mindset difference that we have, and like I said, I appreciate it because it's just different people. It's just a different way of looking at things. Where I have the mindset, like every time someone said like, I don't know how you do that. How do you train every day and eat only this many calories, and you just do it. Like you have to. I hit a switch in my mind that says, okay, I'm getting ready for this competition. It's not an option. Like there is no other choice. Like I'm going to eat this many calories today. I'm going to eat these exact meals. I'm going to go to the gym, like, because that's what you do. It's not even a willpower thing at that point to me. It's just like, it's almost like robotic. Like it's just, that's your program. That's what you do, right? And so that's where I take that kind of hard-nosed, just mechanical approach to it, instead of looking at myself like introspectively and saying, you know, like I'm trying to win a battle against myself. The battle's won. Like it's just a matter of going through the motions of doing it. You know what I mean? And so that's just something like, I'm glad that came up because it's an interesting way of looking at it, and that's my perspective. And a lot of you might have Rob's perspective, where, you know, maybe I want to do my first bikini competition because it's an opportunity for me to get on stage in front of people and like come out of my shell a little bit. I want to work on my self-confidence. That's fantastic. That's awesome. I cannot give you enough praise for that. But again, to me, it's just like, okay, I'm going to do this just because I want to win. And like, I like pushing my body to the limits. And the process of getting there is a set path that I have. Like, we have our dietitians here, obviously, that Rob and I both work with for a diet build up. So Andrew gives me a meal plan that says eat this many carbs, this many fats, this many proteins each day going into the show. Say, okay, I do that. How many days of cardio do you want me to do? He's like, well, you could do low intensity for this many, or this duration, this many days a week if you want. You could do some high intensity stuff here and there. I'm like, okay, done. It's just you just do it, right? So like I said, that was just a unique, interesting concept that I wanted to address real quick. And if I can remember what the other one was, because now it's slipping out of my mind, because Rob covers 15 topics whenever he goes on a rant there.
To Jeremiah's point, though, I'm not saying that I don't hit a switch, and I'm not disagreeing with him, but both of us have went through experiences that allowed us to get there. At one point, we did not have the switch to hit. We didn't know what we were doing.
Oh, I'd love to talk about like my first competition. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was a level of uncertainty that can't be described. You didn't know if you were doing anything right. And you have trainers, and eventually we added dietitians, and I would like to speak to that too. But from an emotional standpoint and from a self-confidence standpoint, your first several shows, you can hit the switch and say, quote unquote, hit the switch and say, I'm doing this. But there's uncertainty at every corner.
Oh, yeah.
And that uncertainty exists anytime you're doing something new. The reason that I start dieting on January 1st is because it's routine. The reason that I compete in April or May is because it's routine. Everything about how I compete now is structured. And the power of routine is that it's simplistic. You don't have to question. If you go to the gym at the same time each day, and you take the same route, and it's because you're going right after work or you're going before work, your brain is going to pick up on that routine and it's going to reinforce it. And so I've taken every single opportunity that I can to make competing a routine, to the point that I grow my beard during my competition up until I have to shave for the show, because it's just a very minute but like subconscious example that if I have a beard, I'm probably dieting. And then I shave and then I don't have a beard in like April and May. And that just makes it easier on you. The more things that you can do routine, whether it be your eating or your training, you're going to have greater success. January 1st, I start eating a meal plan. I start doing cardio. I start training a certain way. I figure out how much body fat I have, and I diet 1 week for every half pound that I have to lose, and then I look for a show that many weeks out. Everything about that is very switch, hit, very routine. But that comes with practice, and that comes with, again, learning more about yourself. When I do my introspective thinking, it's not while I'm dieting. While I'm dieting, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm doing all of the things that I need to get in the condition that I need to get in, and also still being a friend, a coworker, a boss, a family member, because those things are important to me, and not portraying the mentality that bodybuilding means you can't do something. I've never wanted bodybuilding to be my excuse to not interact with people or to make others feel like they needed to change what they're doing. It's like when you go to eat for Thanksgiving, for those who are able to still get with their families in a safe manner, and for Christmas as that comes up, and COVID, has changed all that. But when we think about Thanksgiving, we have a diabetes prevention program, and then our dietitians also talk about this a lot. You don't go to Thanksgiving and tell everybody, I'm trying to eat healthier, I can't eat any of this. Or maybe you do, but
you don't cancel the feast.
You don't cancel it.
Yeah.
You go there with your goals in mind, and you try to make the best decisions available to you. That's how I take bodybuilding, which is an extreme example, and I try to live my life that way. I still go to Thanksgiving. I still go out for happy hours. I still spend time with people. And I have a lunchbox that I carry with me everywhere. I'm pretty much a glorified bag lady. I have my gym clothes, my backpack with my work stuff, and my lunchbox every single day. And I'm still there. And maybe I'm hungry and I'm lethargic because my body doesn't have enough calories for me to be witty or energetic. But I'm still there, and people understand why I am that way. So, yeah, still hitting the switch, still doing those things, but that's going to come with experience. And the more that you can do to build a routine around that, the easier it's going to be. And that applies for everything.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to just having a plan in place and then just doing it. Right? You just do what you're supposed to do, and that's how you accomplish a goal.
Yeah.
Right?
I always joke that bodybuilding is not inherently hard. Yeah. I know what I'm eating. I know what I'm training.
It's very simple.
You just do it. To Jeremiah's point,
it's not easy.
Making sure you have quality resources to help with those things, like a trainer who can tell you It's why people want an athletic trainer who have an exercise science background. It is nice to just have your workouts programmed for you, because then you don't have to think about it. Could you come up with it on your own? Yes. Could I write my own diet and write my own training program? Of course I could. Would it cause me stress because then there's doubt and am I not creating this in the right format for me? Absolutely. I met Andrew while he was doing his internship at Smucker's in Orville, Ohio, because I'm from the area, and I was working at a gym that he was training at after his internship, and turned out that he was a dietitian. We had a lot in common. I told him that I competed in bodybuilding, and when he started his AM Wade Nutrition Group, LLC, doing business as Case Specific Nutrition, I was the first person to pay him. I remember I had to ask my mom to front my cost. It was $200 for my diet, and that was the first time I didn't use bro science. And just to share this as a laugh, Andrew gave me a diet that had a ton of variety and yogurt and whole foods and all that good stuff. And I am not your standard person when it comes to food. because I like simple. If I have hot sauce or peanut butter, I can eat cardboard. And so he gave me this diet with all this variety, and I came back to him and I asked if I could have all of my protein come from red meat, because my parents are dairy farmers and I have unlimited red meat, and if all of my carbs could come from sweet potato and oatmeal, and if I could just do steamed broccoli. And the man, I'm surprised his eyes didn't roll out of his head. But that's how I've dieted ever since. I like simple. We still joke about it, but
I've seen Rob eat like 3 different things in my life, and every other time it's literally ground beef, broccoli, and sweet potato or rice.
Yeah.
Every single time. Like when we aren't dieting, when Rob and I are both in the off season, so to speak, this man still looks like he's dieting at all times because he has his lunchbox and his beef and broccoli and rice. I laugh at him all the time, like, Rob, eat a cheeseburger. Like, eat something else. And he has no interest in it. And
I like the routine.
It cracks me up. I
like the
would
routine.
rather die. That's something else. That's a whole different tangent. We don't need to go down. But like, when I'm not dieting, I can't eat oatmeal when I'm not dieting. This goes back to that switch too. As soon as I hit the switch and go into like bodybuilding prep mode, all I want is oatmeal and egg whites. That's it. When I'm not dieting and not restricted like that, I want nothing to do with either of them. I've probably eaten oatmeal 3 times since my last competition in July of 2018.
Yeah.
And it's all I eat during that time when I'm prepping. But when I am not, I would literally, when I say I would rather die than eat like oatmeal or vegetables in general. I like vegetables, but I hate cooking them and like prepping them. I won't do it whenever I'm not dieting.
Yeah.
But when I'm dieting, it's some kind of sustenance that is going into my body. So I'm like, this is so funny too. Again, another tangent, but I'm enjoying this conversation too much. Like, I will make my beef and my rice, or my chicken and my rice, whatever, my broccoli, and I will take it from its Tupperware container, and I'll go buy those bags of salad, like those individual bags of salad. And I would dump that into like a serving bowl, and then just dump my beef and rice or my chicken and rice, whatever, over top of the salad, and add like vinegar or Bolthouse Farms dressing or something like that. And I will eat an enormous family-sized salad because it's just some kind of like substance.
Right.
The calories in that salad are almost negligible, and so it doesn't really affect my weight loss at all. So I'll eat 2 or 3 enormous salads every single day. You know what I mean? And it's so funny because like it just in the off season when I love salad, but I see salad and I'm like, that's going to fill me up and not provide the sustenance that I need to like build to have gains, right? So like I'm like, do I really want to waste my stomach capacity on this salad whenever I could have more meat or more rice? You know what I mean? It's so funny, that mindset shift. It's hysterical.
It's identifying patterns. So bodybuilding is very much a pattern that you just get back into, and every time you do it, you're going to learn something. I've never done carb loading the same way. I've used honey. I've drank honey out of a bottle. I've done cream of wheat with honey in it, peanut butter, jelly, rice cakes. I don't miss rice cakes. My first diet when I was doing Bro Science, he had me eat rice cakes too.
Tuna and rice cakes, baby.
Tuna and rice cakes. Oh my goodness. And so there are still those components. Even, again, another example of this year, because I continue to work with Andrew, we actually did my labs for the first time because I deal with some chronic soreness. Part of that is my sleep hygiene and potentially overtraining or not getting enough salt. And so my liver enzymes are high, and some of my other values are a little elevated. And when you look at your overall health and then bring that into your ability as a competitor, obviously I put myself under a lot of stress when you don't have much or any body fat, and that affects your hormones. But I need to make sure that all of those things are being considered and that I'm making adaptations to be as healthy as I can year round, so that for that short period of time where I have to be under greater stress because you have to be lean to compete, that my body is better equipped to deal with it, and then I quickly get back to a place of health. And working with a dietitian and doing that level of testing and having clinical outcomes driven lab data and guidance is so important. You know, even from a training standpoint, I always tell people, and I know that Jeremiah is a huge advocate of this, if you're going to the gym and you're not recording sets and weight and intensity, how do you know that you're progressing? Because like I said, with your brain, your mind being your primary muscle, you're going to have days where you go into the gym and you're tired or you're stressed out. And if you're going based off of how you feel, that is not a good determination of what your body is actually capable of. So having that log that shows I did this many sets of this exercise for this many reps, I need to be able to do that or more, is so important. Details are the primary driver of success in bodybuilding. You have to enjoy the details game. Now, are they necessary for general wellness and health? No, of course not. You do not need to track your exercise to be overall healthy, to maintain a healthy body weight and blood volume and energy level, to feel good. That goes back to your basics. But once you've incorporated those basics and you're looking at what your next level goals are, details drive that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to start to kind of wrap this up, and I think that last little bit kind of raises a good point that should be addressed. You know, if we're going to call this the bodybuilding mindset podcast today, if you are considering doing a show, and we're talking about the suffering and the pain and all the negatives that come with competing,
blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, the blood, sweat, and tears that go into competing. Here's my final advice to you, and I'm sure Rob will agree with me on this. Get professional help with your prep, right? So my first competition, I did not have any idea what I was doing as far as like diet, right? I was just eating. Here's what I did. Every morning, this is at the dining hall at school, I would have an egg white omelet with some peppers in it and a little bit of hot sauce on it. And for lunch and dinner, I would have a big salad with some like lunch meat, turkey breast on it, and then I would just like cover it in nuts and berries and veggies and all this stuff. That was literally how I ate for 3 months. And it actually got to the point where my body started to reject turkey meat. So if I ate turkey, I would get physically ill, and I would actually feel nauseated from it. I don't think I ever threw up from it, but like months later, even after that competition, I couldn't eat turkey. Today, after a while, it did finally correct itself, but my body was actually rejecting turkey. That's how I ate. So anyway, that was my first competition. I jumped into another one like a couple weeks later. I looked awful. I was just depleted. I didn't know how to load my carbs, how to pump up, anything like that. And so the second competition I did, which was actually like an NPC show, I was a disaster. And I think I did not even like they stopped ranking your position like before me. I wasn't even ranked. That's how bad I did. The next time I competed was the Slippery Rock show in 2014, and this is the year that I had met Rob and met Andrew through him, and I had an actual meal plan. I was starting to learn how to count macronutrients, etc. And so I had a plan to follow, and I looked 10 times better. I think I was 10, 15 pounds heavier on stage the second time, or the third time I competed, I guess. And so, yeah, I never needed the help with the exercise. I was always pretty good about doing that on my own. But no one naturally understands nutrition without some kind of help. So I'm not saying you should go to just another competitor and get a meal plan or a training plan from them. But if you do, or if you go to the dietitian, like we're suggesting here, go to an actual like professional that knows and understands exercise, just take the plan that they give you and follow it to a T. Don't overthink it. And that's like Rob said, you always have your doubts, and I still doubt myself every time I get ready for a competition. I'm not going to be lean enough, this or that. But it's out of my hands. Andrew tells me what to do, I do it. I know how to train. I know I have to go to the gym 5-6 days a week. I do it. It's not... You just have to trust that those processes and that plan laid out for you are going to get you to where you want to go. And maybe that angle, you're not quite where you want to be. Adjust and do the same thing next time, because you're going to improve every time either way. If you don't get better between shows, that's something that is an underlying issue that you need to address with yourself. But if you have a plan that you're consistently following, you're going to find success eventually. And I can't stress that enough. I've been saying that since 2014. Like, anyone who's trying to get ready for a competition themselves, I've said, don't do it. Go get professional help, because you're going to be so thankful you spent the money and took that extra time and effort to do that instead of just trying to do it all on your own. Anything else from you, Rob?
No, I think you hit it all.
All right.
A plan goes a long way. Failing to plan is planning to fail.
Correct. That's 100% true. Well, guys, I think that's going to wrap up this episode. That is almost an hour-long discussion right there of bodybuilding and things of that nature. Rob and I both just going to get on tangents and go off, and it looks like that's exactly what happened today. So we'll wrap it up. Thank you guys for listening in for episode 11. Episode 12 will be coming at some point in the next undetermined amount of time because, like we said, consistency is key. This podcast is unlikely to ever actually find real success because I'm horrendously inconsistent with it. So do better than me. But listen in and find us on episode 12 next time. Until then, thanks for listening to the East Pittsburgh Fitness Podcast, and we will talk to you later.